everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. There's an old saying in the Black community that death comes in threes. But this time, the community, indeed the world, pays tribute to 4 African Americans who gave of themselves to make our lives better. We pay homage to Kobe Bryant, Katherine Johnson, B. Smith, and Byron Burney. Then later in the show, we talk with Courtney Kittrell, author of Unapologetically Favored. She will share her inspirational story of rising from depression and despair because of racism and sexism into finding her purpose and helping others find theirs. Stay tuned. Another View is coming up next, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. We begin our program today with tributes to 4 outstanding African Americans who used their talents to make life better for all of us. We begin with entrepreneur, model, and television host B. Smith. Her restaurant, B. Smith's, was the gathering place for affluent African Americans in Manhattan, and in Washington, D.C. and Sag Harbor, New York locations, her clientele crossed the color line. She was born Barbara Elaine Smith, and she shortened it to B. Smith when she started her modeling career. B. Smith wrote books on cooking and entertaining, developed a furniture line. She had bedding, tableware, and bath products, and hosted a syndicated TV show. She was often referred to as the Black Martha Stewart. B. Smith died on February 22nd of early onset Alzheimer's disease, and she was 70 years old. On Monday of this week, sports legends, players, dignitaries, fans, and family and friends came together to pay tribute to basketball great husband and father Kobe Bryant, his daughter Gianna, and the 7 other people who died in the tragic helicopter crash in January. Also on Monday, mathematician Katherine Johnson passed away. She was called a human computer, and it was her job to develop equations that helped NASA send astronauts into orbit and then later to the moon. Though her position was classified as sub-professional, Mrs. Johnson used a slide rule or mechanical calculator in complex calculations to check the work of her superiors, white male engineers. Her work went largely unnoticed until she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Obama in 2015, and her research was celebrated in the book Hidden Figures by Margot Lee Shetterly and in an Oscar-nominated movie adaptation. Mrs. Johnson died in her home in Newport News. She was 101 years old. But the death that hit our local journalism community the hardest is the tragic passing of Byron Burney. Our Lisa Godley brings us this tribute.
Byron Keith Burney was a fixture in the Hampton Roads media community, always bearing a gentle smile whether he was toting a camera on his shoulder or working in a supervisory role. Byron's life was cut short early Friday morning following a single-vehicle crash off Manning Road in Suffolk. The news of his death left colleagues and friends stunned, and as they process the loss, they graciously share fond memories. Veteran news anchor Barbara Sierra remembers meeting Byron in the early 80s when she worked at WVEC.
We had a long professional relationship. We had some wonderful victories in terms of some award-winning work together. And he was very supportive when I returned to school, his school, Hampton University, to complete my degree. And he was my biggest cheerleader. I often refer to him as my brother from another mother because I just felt like he was that brother for me.
Byron Burney rose through the ranks at WVEC, from editor to videographer to chief videographer to operations manager.
He was one of those folks who no matter what position he held at the television station, he was impeccably dressed. And I think that probably comes from his ties with his fraternity. He was an Omega man. And so it didn't matter whether it was a casual occasion or whether it was dress up, he was always put together.
Another friend and colleague who remembers Byron well is former Wavy TV anchor Alveda Ewell. She and Byron also met at WVEC.
When I left to go to Wavy, and it was basically right across the street, Byron and I were still really close. I mean, we talked about any and everything. All the stations would still get together at different places and hang out and talk and have fun. Our days at a place on Colley Avenue used to be called the Intermission. And I almost have tears in my eyes thinking about the Intermission when me and Byron and a whole lot of other people from VEC and TKR and Wavy would just meet up there. And they had caricatures of all of us just around the whole place. And so that became our hangout spot because they loved the TV industry. And Byron was one of those people, and we just had a good time. I don't remember ever seeing him without a smile on his face.
Byron was working as a photojournalist when he met former WVEC reporter Sheldon Ingram in the late 80s. Working as a team, they covered many in-depth news stories, netting awards along the way. And even when Sheldon moved to a larger television market, the two remained close. Their friendship spanned 30 years.
Byron always presented himself as a strong anchor, a very loyal, supportive friend. And Byron always brought a very strong, positive energy to whatever it was that he did. Whether he was playing music, whether he was playing softball, whether he was working professionally, whether he was in civic organizations, church organizations, he always brought a defined, positive energy into the area, the space that he was working with, whomever he was with. And he was consistent that way.
Byron served as a deacon and musician at Newport News' First Baptist Church, East End. Just another example of how he always made it a point to be generous with his time, his wisdom, and his support. Byron Burney was 61. He is survived by his wife Tracy and a host of relatives and friends, including his Hampton Roads media family. He will truly be missed.
And as I sit here and listen to that tribute, I remember Byron being one of the first people that I met when I came here to Hampton Roads as assistant news director at WTKR, and he was always so supportive. A celebration of Byron's life will be held tomorrow at 11 at First Baptist Church East End. That's at 3000 Jefferson Avenue in Newport News. The viewing is today at the church from 1 until 4, followed by family visitation from 6 until 8, which will include a memorial service conducted by Omega Psi Phi fraternity. The Another View crew extends our deepest condolences to the families of Katherine Johnson, Kobe Bryant, B. Smith, and Byron Burney. We'll be right back. And welcome back. It's hard enough being a woman in the United States Navy. Couple that with the rigorous work to rise up the leadership ranks, demanding respect from your subordinates as well as your leadership, while at the same time coming to grips with your sexuality during the don't ask, don't tell era of the 90s. Courtney Kittrell almost lost herself in all of this, but she didn't. Her story is one of inspiration for anyone who has ever felt lost or as if they don't belong. She is the author of Unapologetically Favored. Please welcome to Another View, Courtney Kittrell. Hi, Courtney.
Hey, honey.
How you
for
doing?
having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. I tell you, I loved reading your book. I do have a question for you, though, off the bat, so that people will understand. What does unapologetically favored mean to you?
Unapologetically favored means that you don't have to apologize for all the blessings that have come upon you throughout your life. A lot of times people get jealous or the hate shot at you just because you are able to achieve things or things seem to keep going your way or you have beginner's luck with everything that you decide to do. And people get angry and we sometimes feel guilty about that because you don't want anybody around you to have like hurt feelings or, feel some type of way. But you shouldn't have to apologize for that. I always say we all have the same 24 hours in a day. What you choose to do with yours is your decision. You have control over that. But I don't have any control over what happens, if all my blessings and my prayers are being answered, pray a little harder or focus on you and stop worrying about me. But unapologetically favored is don't apologize for being favored throughout your life.
So you're active duty.
I am.
Now, okay, and tell tell us your rank and what you do kind of on a daily basis.
I am a senior chief E8, and I am an aviation administration person. So pretty much I'm an aviation secretary. I maintain the F-18 fighter jets, the paperwork, inspections, flight hours, all that good stuff. So,
But that's not where you started out.
that is not where I started out. I started out at the bottom, and now I'm here.
So what made that little girl that grew up in Greensboro, North Carolina, where I went to college, by the way, what made you decide to go into the service instead of going to college, going straight to college?
Well, it was a couple of different things, different avenues. You know, going through high school, nobody thinks about that time's going to come where high school is no longer going to happen. You're going to have to grow up, figure out your life after, you graduate. And I remember my stepfather passed away, and I knew there wasn't really any money really for my brother and I to go to college. Grants, loans, all that stuff I didn't have that much knowledge about it. I didn't seek out knowledge about it. And being in ROTC in high school, we used to always have guest speakers come by from different branches and talk about their experiences in life. And I remember there was a senior chief. I can't remember his name. It's been 21 years ago. But he came by and told a story about going to the Philippines. And I said, ooh, the Philippines, that's something different. And I remember we had a Sergeant Poole who was actually in the Army, because I almost went to the Army. And he spoke to us, but he was just hounding me to join the Army. But the more he pushed, the more I pulled away. Like, man, leave, what are you doing? No. So I started leaning towards the Navy. And I remember getting information for like a college or a university out in Hawaii. And I brought it home to my mom, and she said, you're not going nowhere. You're not going to Hawaii. And I'm like, well, if I can't go to Hawaii, well, I'm going to the Navy. At least the Navy might take me to Hawaii. So I ended up joining the Navy just because I wanted to get away. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to travel the world. I didn't want to live in a certain, different countries, but I wanted to experience, put my toes in the water, take them out, come back home type mentality. So I wanted to get away, do something different, and not stay limited to the area that I was born and raised
So
in.
when you were first going in and so forth, as you said, you started at the bottom, but was it always your desire, excuse me, to rise in terms of management, in terms of rising in the ranks and becoming a leader inside the Navy?
Oh, no, ma'am. Nobody. At that time, that was not even a thought process. I was going to do my first enlistment and get out. When I was told I had to strip and wax a floor, that was not part of my contract. That was not a thing. So that made me go, oh, I'm not doing this for life. What in the world? But it was the people that were put into my life during that time that were like, no, you have potential to do this. No, I'm going to put you up for this. And I started seeing people that looked like me that were achieving. And I said, well, shoot, if they can do it, let me kind of hang on in there, because a lot of, we don't stop and think about the people that have gone before us, really. And we think our lives are bad. Can you imagine, like for my grandfather example, he retired 30 years in the Army, and I'm thinking about how he had to go through the military.
And I bet his experience was a lot different than your experience.
So, I didn't come in necessarily saying, oh, I want to be a leader, I want to be a lifer, I want to retire. I just came in, and that was it. But as I stayed in and started seeing people that looked like me, started given opportunities, I was given goals, I was succeeding, I was achieving, I was seeing the fruits of my labor. It pushed me and motivated me to want to keep going and keep seeing what else I can do, what else is next. So 21 years later.
As a civilian who's never been in the service, sometimes when I think about military service as a whole, when they talk about the regiment and they talk about, how orderly and how things are, and I look at your personality, your immediate thought would be that would be stifling for you. But it seems like that's more of a catalyst for you to be even more effervescent.
And I was lucky because I did ROTC in high school, so I was kind of used to the structure and organization. It wasn't Navy, it was Air Force, but I had my grandfather who was in the Army. When I would go visit him, we're doing the 45 corners, making up beds with my grandmother and making sure everything was in its place when it was supposed to be there. So I grew up with structure and discipline. So it wasn't really that hard for me to conform to it when I came in, so to speak, because I already knew. I was already raised to be obedient. I was raised to, follow directions and not question an adult at the time. That was just how I was raised. So yeah, it was pretty easy.
It was pretty easy. Except you went through some changes.
Oh, I did. I went through a whole lot of the things. Ooh, but it made me who I am today. So I have no complaints. I won't regret anything. But the changes were they were eye-opening, and it's sad that we're in a time where people are afraid to be themselves. because we don't want to let other people down, especially our parents. Because your parents, they always want to raise children better or do more for them or want more for them than what they had. And so we grew up with that mindset. And then, North Carolina, Southern Baptist raised in church, and you hearing the pastor, you going to hell of X, Y, and Z, and you're like, I don't want to go to hell. I want to be here with everybody else, So you just kind of keep everything locked up on the inside of you. You deal with it. You try to process it, but you can't process something you don't know nothing about, and there's nobody there that's like you that you know of that you can talk to about it. So you keep everything in, And
so when you went into the service, and hold on one second. Let me get the phone number because I think people may want to join our conversation. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. We're talking with author Courtney Kittrell about her military life, about mental health issues. We'll be getting a little bit into that. And we'll also be talking about sexuality and the LGBTQ community. So when you went into the service, were you as concerned about fitting in and figuring out how to be a sailor on top of trying to figure out where you were sexually?
Oh, yes. Okay,
so you had both of those going on at the same time.
And being young, again, that's a lot of stress, a lot of pressure on a young person with no outlet, nobody to be there where you can talk to them and tell them what you're going through and they guide you on this path. There's nobody that you know, because at that time in the military, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was alive and kicking. If there was any hints or if anybody came and said, I fought, then you would be exiled, really. You get put out the military. So nobody would risk it, and you don't know who you can trust. Even if it was your best friend, that person could be having, something they don't like about you, and this is their way of getting back at you. Oh, they told me, they're gay. Oh, it looked like they were kissing, or it looked like they were a little too close. And that comes into question, and they could just put you out. So you don't say anything. But growing up, I did a good job of hiding it because I had boyfriends and relationships. I had heterosexual relationships.
You almost had to come out to yourself.
I did.
First, before you could come out to anybody else.
But that's the only way you can get ahead. That's the only way. You have to be okay with it yourself, love yourself, accept yourself. Once you do that, you don't care what nobody else thinks. Because the people who matter don't mind. And the people that mind don't matter. So if you can't be okay with it yourself, you can't expect nobody else to be okay, because you're going to be uncomfortable every time you get around because you are not comfortable in your own skin.
So as a Black woman, is it easier today for you to be a lesbian Black woman than it was, say, in the 90s?
Oh, yeah.
When you were coming through.
Oh, yeah.
So you do think it's getting better?
Because more of us are out.
The Black community still has that stigma that, for whatever reason, there's still that stigma within our community. And so I wonder, how is it easier to navigate now because the laws have changed, or do you think our attitudes in the Black community are starting to change?
I just think it's changing, one, because our environment, our world, our time right now is changing. Nobody cares anymore. And our generation now, we have seen things, and I say social media plays a part in everything in life right now. And because more people are aware of it, they understand. They have a family member now who don't got the courage to say, look, this is who I am. They're a little more empathetic. So when they see a stranger, they're a little more empathetic now, because nobody really wants to wish bad on a family member, their child, their mother, their father. So you kind of embrace it. There are stories and there are situations where you might have a family that has just done away with their child, or done away with the parents or the cousin or whoever it may be that came out of the closet. But for the most part, we're a little more accepting now because they are more understanding. The knowledge is there. People are teaching and explaining and showing them that I'm a person just like you. My marriage is just like yours. There's nothing different. Same thing.
Same thing. Everything still goes through the same issues. But from a societal standpoint, then let's look at the whole issue of being African American and lesbian, and the racism and sexism that you face or could face in those situations. Has it gotten any easier?
It has.
Do you think?
It has. When I first came in, my first command was all male. So when I showed up, I was probably maybe a second or third female that has showed up to this command.
Wow.
So when I went into my first work center, it was all guys. And I remember walking in, and so the cranios that we wear on the flight deck of an aircraft carrier, anytime we're launching and recovering an aircraft, it comes in bags and pieces. You got to put them all together and all this kind of stuff. And I remember the bags being thrown at me, and I picked up the bags and I said, what in the world is this? I didn't know. And another fellow, Nunez, pulled up beside me and said, don't worry, I'll show you how to put it together. And I had another gentleman, Airman Smith. I don't know what it was. I feel like, I just interrupted whatever he had going on, and he just got mad and said, oh, no, don't help her. She want to be treated like an equal. Let her put our own beep together. So it was kind of like, wow. Oh, wow. Like, this is what I got to deal with. Now, at the time, I was only female in there. So it was scary and intimidating for me, because I'm thinking this is what my life is about to be. But at the same time, I took that and said, oh, no, you're not going to punk me. You are not going to punk me. And it made it encouraged me and pushed me to just, I'm going to do this because you think I can't.
You're a fighter.
I am when it comes to some things. I am to a certain point, but I'm a lover too. I'm a lover.
I love that. So you learned how to put it together.
I learned how to put it together.
And then
I took over the work center,
right,
and he got mad. And then from there, I kept breaking up, and I moved on. I said, oh, this is how I got to play the game? Then I'm on. Put me in the game, coach, and that's how I've been ever since.
So when you look at leadership in the military today, as you talk about in your book, part of your job as a leader is to look out for your sailors, to make sure that they're doing okay mentally, physically, emotionally, as they're deployed or whatever, and that their families are okay, and that they can function in their jobs. Who looks after the leaders?
When you find out, let me know. And that's the struggle that we have, and how the book came about, and that's exactly what I was talking about. Nobody asks us how we are doing. And, and I call us middle management, because we're supporting the top leadership and we're trying to pull the bottom, your bottom personnel. Right. And in the middle, we're stretched and we're pushed and we're pulled, and nobody's saying, hey, do you need a minute to sit down and take a break? Do you need to go over here and do this? Because we don't want to look weak. We don't want to seem like we can't do our job. We don't want to be demoted because we've lost of confidence in what we're doing because we're stressed out. So nobody will dare say, I need to take a minute, on top of nobody asking, because they think that we can just handle everything.
So do you all in the middle then come together and say we'll have to support each other?
Yes, ma'am. We have to check on each other. And when you have been around, most typical commands, 3, 4, 5 years, when you are, I say between E6 and E9 in that area, you start to learn each other, because you're around each other so much, and your families are around each other so much, that when somebody is kind of not 100% themselves for a day, and it will take nothing for me to walk up to somebody and say, hey man, what's going on? Because you're not yourself today, or why are you being extra yourself today? What's happening? What are you covering up? And I'm known to do that at work. Even with my sailors, they'll be like, oh my God, Senior Chief, really? Like, no, you're going to come and talk to me, because it's going to be that moment where you don't talk to somebody, that something happens, and I'm going to regret it, because I had that opportunity and I never asked you.
So it is incumbent upon you all to take it upon yourselves to go seek.
We have to.
If they will not come forward.
We have to realize we have to do that, but a lot of us do not do that.
But there was a time when and I apologize if I don't know the correct terminology in terms of, but you had a job where I think you failed the weight test.
Oh yes.
Or there was, and you went through a dark period within that time frame.
Correct.
In terms of, because it meant holding back your promotion.
Correct. So the military, they do physical fitness tests, and part of that is a BCA weight. You got to weigh in, being within a certain weight, within a certain fat standards. And I failed it by like 1%. And that was the first time I failed something in my life. That was the first time I failed in the Navy. I was a command fitness leader on board the USS Enterprise. And, that job is huge by itself, because you're in charge of physical fitness for like 3,000 people on a ship. And
then you failed the physical
test. I taught spin classes at Mount Trashmore, YMCA. I taught swim lessons. I was circuit training. I was doing everything. And here I was, and I just felt this body fat percentage. Are you serious? Wow. And it took a lot out of me, because I felt like a failure. How could I be pushing my sailors to do great, to make sure they're achieving and obtaining, but yet I didn't do what I was preaching? And it set me back as a leader, and I had to snap out of it, thanks to one of my good friends, Trish Robinson. She pretty much told me to pull my head out my butt and get back in the game. So I thank her to this day for that. And it set me back, because I felt like a huge failure. I really did.
Wow. If you're just joining us, we're talking with author Courtney Kittrell. Her book is called Unapologetically Favored. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. If you're in the Navy, if you're in any of the military service, you're in that middle rank, can you relate to what Courtney is talking about in terms of leadership? Give us a call and let's talk about it. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So you had to get your head back in the game, which meant you had to go get back in shape.
Most definitely. And not blame myself. Figure out where my flaws were, accept that, say okay, and keep pressing forward.
Courtney, that takes a lot for a person. And I know you were really into mental health for folks. How do you get where do you get the wherewithal to say to yourself, okay, I got to get this together. I can't just wallow in the fact that, this happened to me, but I've got to pull myself up and move forward.
I have no idea. I really do. I don't know. It's just something that just clicks in me sometimes. And I'm just like, I'll have a moment, but then I'll say, okay, that's enough. Let's move on. I'll have my day or two. I might have a week, but after that, that's it. You got to keep going forward. You got to think about, okay, if this didn't work, what's going to be the lesson? How can you turn this around? How can you be resilient and bounce back from this? And that's what I tried to do. So when I failed that the BCA standard, it was funny because at the time, so like a leading chief petty officer, LCPO, you normally have other chiefs or petty officers or people that you're leading. At that time, I was a LCPO, but I didn't have anybody up under me. I had a civilian guy, but he'd been at the command for 10 years. Pretty much, he was showing me how to do my job. So when I felt that, they removed me from my position, and they put me working with the sailors in boot camp who couldn't run or pass their physical fitness test. And I said, okay, all right, I got this. So I went and worked with them, running 3-4 times a day, a week, encouraging them, motivating them. But at the same time, I was speaking to myself. And it's funny because, I always say you can't show people your weakness, because once you do, they will ping on that, because people sit in the bushes waiting to see how you're going to react to something, and how you handle a situation can define your character. Sometimes people will say, oh, I know she couldn't do it. Oh, I know she wasn't worth it. I know she wasn't going to bounce back. Oh, it was going to drag her down. And people like to see people's downfall. Yeah. I understand. So I said, okay, I'm not going to give them that satisfaction. So I went there and I did what I had to do. The LCPO that was in charge of that fitness area, when he was gone, I would stand in for him. I would attend his meetings. I would make decisions on his behalf, to the point that he got pulled aside and was asking, if we took Courtney away from you, would you be okay? And he was like, please don't pull her. She's my girl. Don't do it. And he gave me a heads up, hey, they want to move you to another position. And I'm like, well, what? And I said, okay, God, I hear you. I'm just going to let this thing play out. And they did. They moved me to a LCPO job. Well, now I'm in charge of all the recruits showing up for the boot camp for the first time. And there's about 40,000 recruits that come through boot camp a year. So now I'm in charge of, their first introduction to boot camp, getting off the bus, getting yelled at, all that good stuff. But it was funny because when I got removed from my first position over into the fitness area, when I was removed, I didn't have any people working up under me. And I was the LCPO. I got moved. I was not the LCPO. Now here I am in charge of 5 chiefs and about 30 petty officers. And I said, this is funny. It was funny. And then I kept my head in the game. I pulled my head out my butt and got selected to go and be in charge of pretty much a whole building. And it baffled me. And I said, you know what? You got to figure out how to bounce back, and it will work out in your favor. You take your minute, you take a knee, let your emotions flow, because your emotions are going to happen. You're human. You're going to have emotions. But when it's said and done, all right, get through that, process it. Now figure out a game plan to get back in the game. What are you going to do to bounce back? What are you going to do to learn your lesson? Figure it out and keep pushing. And when you do that, because people are watching you the whole entire time, and when they see that negative part of your life didn't hold you down, they're going to be like, oh, she's about something. Okay, we can use you for another position. We can use you for another job interview. We can use you for, something else that you probably wanted in life but didn't know if you were ever going to get it. And here it was. This was your test to see if you were even worthy to get it. And you find out that you're worthy. all you can say is unapologetically favored. Will not complain.
What is it about the military, or if there was a lesson from the military that you think that every person should know and utilize in their civilian life? Is there something that that you think would make life easier for all of us if only the world would do it like we do in the military? What would that be?
Don't ever look at somebody as them being you. People are not you. They don't think like you. They don't act like you. They probably weren't raised like you. They come from a different background, different morals, values. When we can figure out that everybody is they're not us, we will be okay. Because sometimes we don't take enough time to learn what's behind a person so you'll know the person that's in front of you. We just assume, oh, you're stupid, or you got emotional problems, or something's wrong with you. No, people are a certain way for a reason. Whether it's their upbringing, a traumatic experience, whatever the case may be, people are formed in front of you by things in their life. You know what I mean? And we don't think about that. We just get mad because somebody didn't do what we thought they should have done. Well, you know what? They probably had a different way of doing it, and that's okay. They're not like you. Nobody has to do exactly what you want them to do because they're not you.
Exactly. So what are you going to do when you get out?
So, continue writing is one thing. I've been asked to do like a motivational book, and I said, yeah, I can do that. That's easy. And right now, I really do want to work. I want to continue working with sailors and mentoring and just being there for them. So, you know, I'm really looking to if all my people know, Fleet and Family.
You know, I do have a question for you. So a little while ago when there was the attack overseas, and oh gosh, it is escaping me, when the drone went in and the gentleman from, oh, this is terrible, it is escaping me, that just was killed recently. And there was a bombing, and some of the sailors or some of the military personnel received what the president called a headache. But it was actually PTSD. It was actually, they were responding to the response of the bombing of not in Saudi Arabia. Lisa, help me. Where is it that we were? Because I can't remember where there was an attack recently overseas, and President Obama killed President Trump. Good gracious. President Trump ordered the killing of a leader over in Iraq or Iran.
I know what
it
you're
was
talking
for
about.
Iran. I'm
I
sorry.
know what you're talking about.
I should have remembered. I should have had my facts straight. So I apologize for that. But the point being that a lot of the sailors suffered what the president called headaches when they actually bombed the base, and they had trauma from the bombings. A lot of people come back from the service. They look like they're okay, but they've had some traumatic experiences and some traumatic things that they've seen. What would you say in terms of trying to help them know that it's okay to go get help? Because that's part of a stigma also within the military, right?
And it drives me absolutely mad. I go to mental health. I've been going to mental health for like the last 2 years. And people, the stigma is because you go to mental health, you're crazy. That does not mean you're crazy. Anybody, everybody, you're not human if you don't have stress. And I tell people, people's stress thresholds are different, the same way your pain levels are different. Some people might be able to take on tons and tons of stress and it not affect them. Other people might get one stressful situation and it break them down and have them in a closet, like not wanting to be around people ever again. Everybody, again, is different. So it drives me nuts when the military, people in the military think that if you go to mental health, there's something wrong with you. No, mental health is like having a best friend who will never tell your secrets. You can go in there, vent about any and everything. You can go in there. My first session, I cried on the couch for about 45 minutes to an hour. Don't even know why. I just cried. And when I walked out, I felt brand new again. I felt release. I had a pressure release valve, like a good old pressure cook pot, you know, like I felt so good because that's all I needed. Sometimes you don't even want anybody to respond. You just want to get things off your chest. And I love that we have that option, but trying to get people there is another battle. And, you know, when I went through my dark time, when I was thinking about suicide and I was just like, I don't want to be here no more, I can't do this, I knew my resources and knew my options and who I could call. I could have called my mother, but I don't want to weigh her down with my problems. She's dealing with her own stuff. I could have called my brother. He's dealing with his own stuff. You know, you don't want to burden nobody else with your problems, but then again, you don't want to be judged. You don't want to be shamed. You don't want to be looked at like you don't have your life together when all this time on social media and everywhere else, you're smiling and you're happy. You know, it's that false sense of reality. So you just say, you know what? I can't be exposed. Let me just kill myself. That way I don't have to deal with it. But I knew my resources, but it was my choice if I wanted to reach out and get help or not. It is an individual battle. Mental health is an individual battle. And I would say to people, if you are stressed out right now, it doesn't matter if you're stressed because you're falling behind on your bills, you're stressed because, you know, your parents are getting sick, you know how you're going to take care of them. If you're stressed because you're at a dead-end job, you can't stand your boss, I promise you, go talk to somebody and get it off your chest. One, they will be able to give you different options, different paths to take to figure out the situation you're in. And sometimes they're reflected back on you and you'll be like, oh, dang, all this was my fault. Oh, yeah, I guess I can change
that may be
myself.
part of the reason why some people don't go too, because they're not ready to deal with the truth that it's them.
But I tell people, go talk to anybody not anybody, but a medical, you know, provider to actually get things off your chest, because it does work. But the mental health aspect part in the military, they're trying, but that will, you know, like the suicide and all, that will never be 100% done, because everybody has baggage. Nobody knows every single thing about a person. I don't care how much you say you know somebody, you do not know a person.
Yeah,
you don't know a person.
Just in case someone out there listening is thinking about suicide too, we want to give you the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and it is 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-8255. Don't be afraid to reach out and to ask. And just so you all know, I'm not completely crazy. There was a drone strike in Iran. Thank you. And it was the assassination of Soleimani. I was like, my brain is just not working here. What is the deal? So you went through you were married?
Oh, yeah.
At one point?
I was.
You went through a couple of breakups once you finally came out of the closet.
Yep.
And then you found somebody.
I did. And it was funny because I found her on social media. Social media is good for some things. So I stalked her on social media. I stalked her. I'll admit to that. I stalked her. And it was a good stalking. But she came into my life, you know, when I was depressed and I was going through some things, and just first time moving away from home, being away from family, going to a job where the pressure was on you to perform 100%, and you just didn't think you were able to be that person, you know, just so much pressure. And she came and changed my life. And I swear, I tell people, if you can't wake up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning laughing about ridiculous things, and, you know, go to bed laughing about ridiculous things, if you can't be good, just warm, loving friends in the beginning, it is not going to work. And it's been 6 years, and it seems like it's like the first month every day.
Oh, that's great.
That's my little sidekick. Ride or die for life.
So what did she do to kind of bring you out of that depression? Or was it her? Or had you already made up your mind that you were coming out anyway?
I didn't know what was going to happen. Like the first time I talked to her, I didn't know what was going to happen. And I just took things day by day, but it would just seem like we were both from the same area, North Carolina. I'm from Greensboro. She's from Salisbury. And we just clicked. It was just, we're both country city girls, you know, we just clicked. And she was one of the people that she showed me better. She showed me that I had worth. She showed me that, you know, she could not take care of me, but she could meet me where I was at and more. And that's what I needed, because I was always the one that was putting down, taking care of everybody else and giving and giving and giving and giving. I'd never been able to really sit back and let somebody else give to you. Exactly. Yeah. And it was hard in the beginning because, again, like, I'm a very independent person.
Well, I was going to say, that was the other theme that goes through your book, is that you are very independent.
Very independent.
And you really don't depend. You refuse to depend on other people.
And that is a meeting point.
And that was something that you had to learn.
Oh, yes. And I tell people, when you get into a relationship, even now with my sailors, I'll tell them, all right, now you've been single for however long, and you're going to get into this relationship. It is 50-50. So when you want to go hang out at this club, that's where you've been going for the last 2-3 years of your life on a Friday night, guess what? It's going to be times where you're not going to go. It's going to be times where you're going to be like, hey, so we got anything going on this weekend? Because I want to do X, Y, and Z. Do you want to do something? You got to meet. You have to meet, or else it is not going to work.
Are the women different today that are coming into the Navy compared to when you came in?
They are. We are. Because we're more, back then, we were more not put in a box and put on the shelf, but we were not as outspoken. We didn't stand our ground as much because growing up, you kind of, I ain't gonna say back in the olden days, but the woman's place was in the house, in the kitchen, taking care of the kids, doing the chores, the men work, blah, blah, blah. And so you come in, you kind of still had that mindset growing up, kind of like, okay, I know my place. The guys are over here, let them do their thing.
I know my place.
Exactly. And now it's like, my place is wherever I go. Like, I'm gonna mark my territory everywhere. I'm not gonna, not walk into a room because it's full of guys. No, what are y'all in here talking about? Is it me, or you need help with something, or we stand our ground more than we did. We're a little bit more outspoken, and I think that kind of scares people sometimes. Like, oh my goodness, wait. But at the same time, it's like a double-edged sword, because if you have an outspoken female, she has an attitude. But if the guy does it, they're all about business.
So you still are facing some sexism.
Oh yeah, it happens.
Going on.
It happened one day at work, and I had a sailor tell me, a female. He said, that girl, she has a mouth on her. I said, ooh, reflection of yourself, huh? But it's okay when you do it. But when a female does it, she has an attitude problem. That's not how we're going to play this game.
What I can just imagine seeing you there saying that. That's why I'm chuckling, because it takes a strong woman. So do the sailors that you deal with now, do they consider you as one of the guys, or do they consider you as their mom? Their mom.
They do. They tell me that all the time. I have one sailor, he calls me Ma every morning. Good morning, Ma, at work. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, son. But they do. They actually consider me like a part of their family. And a lot of them are just like, wherever you go, I want to go. Or, they'll come and talk to me about any and everything. But, I don't have kids, and the sailors that I lead are my children. And sometimes I tell them they're the best birth control ever, because I could not. Just my patience is not that great sometimes. But they do. They consider me like their mom most of the time. And if I'm not, I'll ask them, like, well, how would your mom feel if she knew right now what you were doing? Do we need to call her? Because I will pick up a phone and call somebody's mother, somebody's big mama, somebody's grandma, whatever, because they need to be snapped back.
A lot of times, particularly in the Black community, there was always the attitude of, okay, well, just go in the service, because you're not going to work, or you're not doing what you're supposed to do, or, go in the service. So do you feel that today's service members, and I know this is a generality, but for the most part, are doing it because they really want to be career sailors, or is this a remediation, or is it a little bit of both?
I think there's a small percentage of those that had parents that were prior service, or grandparents that were prior service, and they just ran in their family. Those are like your go-getters. Those are the ones that come in aspiring to, they want to be like dad and retire, or be like mom and retire. And we have some sailors then who parents are still serving in the military.
Wow.
And, that's what they knew when they saw what it did for their parents, and they want the same thing. And then you have the kids that come in that have no clue. Never had a job, no driver's license, parents did everything for them, and they're here. And we turn into the parents having to teach them everything, because they don't know anything about responsibility and accountability, and showing up to work on time, and, consequences for their actions. Wow. And that's the part that starts to stress you out, because you get lost in taking care of these sailors that are adults. But at the same time, you have to remember that they are still really children, because they became an adult when they turned 18, but were never prepared for that. When I grew up, my mom was like, oh, you're going to get a job. 14, 15 years old, I'm working at Emerald Point Water Park in Greensboro, turn around, Gap Kids, Old Navy, Children's Place. Then I became a certified nursing assistant in high school. Like, I always had a job. So when I joined the military, I knew how to come to work on time. I knew I had to work. I knew if I didn't show up to work, I'm going to get in trouble. I had that sense of discipline in me. These kids these days, honey, I am called a parent. It is stressful. It is stressful because they don't.
And it's interesting because I hear teachers say the same thing.
It is. It's a difference. It's different.
I heard a gentleman say at a event I was at moderating a couple weeks ago, who said, parents, please raise your children,
Yes,
so that we don't have to repair your children.
Yes, that is a true statement. That is a true statement. And I learned that the hard way when I went to, I became a recruit division commander, like a drill sergeant in boot camp. Mm-hmm. And that was my turning point in leadership, I like to say, because being an RDC, you get the kids straight from the parents' house, straight off the streets, or straight out of a car because they were homeless for the last 2 years. You don't know what you're getting. And when you hear their stories, it is crazy. It is. And you're just like, how are you still here? Or thank God that you're still here, because you're getting a second chance on life, because you should have been dead and gone a long time ago. And it just baffles you, because they come in with no sense of, no kind of independence, nothing. Driver's license, just any kind of street sense, knowledge about it. Oh my goodness, it's amazing. It really is amazing. I'm like, don't wait till your kid turns 18 to show them how to be an adult. By that time, it is too late, because the expectation is already there. They should have been working on that as soon as they hit the teenage spot, 13. You need to start teaching them how to work to earn some money, how to, budget their money, how to make sure they know how to be independent and cook and sew holes in their socks and whatever else is needed, because it's going to be a point in time where the parents are not going to be there. And somebody's going to have to, they're going to fall on somebody else's shoulders for somebody else to have to raise and deal with and figure out, okay, what is it that you don't know? Why don't you know this? And we have to take time out of our day to answer the phone at 2:00 in the morning because they don't know how to handle the situation, or bail them out of jail because they couldn't make a decision correctly on their own. It's painful.
Unapologetically Favored is the name of her book, and we are down to a minute and a half. Very quickly, last thing I want you to give us is one piece of advice for all of us to have better mental health.
Love who you are. Love who you are. Find your purpose in life, your passion in life, and that passion is going to give you your purpose. Once you have a purpose, you will feel like you can conquer the world. Walk in your purpose every day. And if you have that confidence, nobody's going to mess with you. Confidence is just the best thing in the world.
Courtney Kittrell, author of Unapologetically Favored, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Claude McKnight of the group Take 6, and you're listening to Another View.
There's a new sun rising. I can see a new horizon. You will keep me realizing you're the biggest part of me.
And welcome back. They entertain and educate through music, dance, and drums to help tell the story. For more than 2 decades, Atapam Entertainment has performed at schools, universities, libraries, and museums, transforming the learning experience into a lot of fun. Our Lisa Godley recently sat down with group members Corey and Lakita Staten as they prepare for a special one-day event entitled After Angelo.
Drums pounding out African rhythms and dancers moving to the beat set the scene as storyteller Corey Staten begins.
Now that baby hawk had fallen from the tree and into the middle of a chicken yard and was raised by the chickens and was taught to believe that he was a chicken. He was taught to scratch the ground like a chicken. He was taught to flap his wings like a chicken. He was taught to peck like a chicken. But one day, as the baby hawk had grown older, an older hawk swooped over the barnyard and landed in a tree and looked at the young hawk and said, "What are you doing, son? What are you doing amongst all those chickens? You ain't no chicken. You're a hawk." The young hawk said, "I am a chicken. See how I scratch? See how I flap? See how I peck the ground? I am nothing but a chicken."
For decades, Atumpan Edutainment has been captivating audiences with its unique style, a style that evolved after 19-year-old Corey lost his sight following a rare condition that caused pressure in his skull and swelling of the optic nerve. He had surgery to relieve the pressure, but doctors could not save his sight. But losing his vision made the once very athletic Corey search for other ways to express himself. He combined his passion with history and education into a tool that has been enlightening audiences for decades.
Grab an instrument, have a seat, play along with us so that you can say that I participated in the rhythms of life with Atumpan Entertainment.
I asked Corey what the name Atumpan meant.
Atumpan is a word from the Ewe culture of Ghana and Togo, West Africa, and it refers to the talking drums.
Corey's wife, Laquita Marie, says it doesn't stop there.
And so often with our dance theater, rather than just come on and dance, we bring the audience in, we educate them along the way, or we tell a story, whether they're actually saying lines in the story, acting in and out of the story. We have props and that sort of thing, but we really have a fun time and we engage the audience. And so After Angelo is really a celebration of culture.
And how it ties into what evolved from those first seeds of culture when Angelo and those 20 and some odd Africans came in 1619. What happened to the culture going forward? And that's what we celebrate. We connect the present, which is after Angelo, to the before Angelo.
This weekend, they'll once again combine dance, storytelling, and music as they participate in After Angelo at Jamestown Settlement. For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
And Angelo was the first female of those 20 and odd Africans that came to Point Comfort in 1619. After Angelo will take place this Saturday, February 29th at Jamestown Settlement. And while you're there, please join me at 3 p.m. while I moderate a panel discussion and audience talkback as we explore talking about race in mixed race spaces. Should be a great conversation, so I hope you'll come out and join us. Also this weekend, check out MAFA 2020, From Africa to America, being performed at Booker T. Washington High School in Norfolk on February 28th and 29th. That's tomorrow and Saturday. Doors open at 6:30 with a performance at 7 each night. Now, this is presented by New Calvary Baptist Church in partnership with Norfolk State University, Norfolk Public Schools, and the Virginia Stage Company. It's free and it's open to everyone. And on Saturday, February 29th, the Alzheimer's Association Southeastern Virginia, along with Norfolk State University and Hampton University, present an African American community forum on Alzheimer's disease in the Black community. It's from 10 until noon at Brown Hall on the campus of NSU. It's free and it's open to everyone, but you must register. Please call 1-800-272-3900 or visit alz.org/SEVA. And also on Saturday, the 29th, the Tidewater African Cultural Alliance presents Afromania, dance, fashion, spoken word, and more. It's at MacArthur Mall Center Court from 4 until 6 p.m. and it's free, so come on out and show your support. And our theme music for Another View today was written and composed by and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer, and Todd Washburn is our audio engineer. I hope I will see you guys at Jamestown on Saturday. And please come out and join us at 3 p.m., although the activities begin at 11. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Make it a fantastic weekend, and be sure to join us again next Thursday at noon for Another View.